I was thinking the other day how stupid I was in my 20s and how much time I wasted in my 20s and all the things that I could have done better in my 20s. Now, I did do a few of the things that I'm going to mention in this video, but there's a lot of things that I could have done better and a lot of things that I wish I would have done sooner. If I could go back in time and tell my younger self to do some of these things, I know that I probably would have been a lot more successful than I am right now. And I know that I probably would have improved my life a lot more than I did. The first thing I would tell you is don't drink so much. I drank almost every night. I went out and partied occasionally, but for the most part, I was like a lonely drinker. I would stay at home and drink and play video games. And I wasted a lot of time doing that, and I wasted a lot of money. You figure all that money I could have saved from all the drinking that I did every night, and then the drinking that I did when I went out, which included like drinking and gambling and partying and buying bottles and doing stupid stuff like that. I just spent so much money on alcohol, and it also was bad for my health. It made me gain weight, it made me feel like crap, and it just wasn't good, and it probably took a few years off of my life. So one thing I'll say is probably don't drink as much. The next thing is gonna be drugs. This is not gonna be super preachy. I'm gonna get into some better things that we can talk about, but the first two obvious things I gotta say is gonna be drugs and alcohol.
I'm here to tell you about drugs and alcohol and why they're bad, okay?
I was just a juvenile delinquent who got arrested a bunch of times and did a lot of drugs and was a bad kid. And then in my 20s, while I stopped doing as many drugs, I still did some drugs on the weekend. I smoked a lot of weed. I wasted a lot of money and time and just my life doing drugs, and I don't do them now. And luckily, I'm glad that I was able to kick a lot of those bad habits. But man, if I could go back in time and just have a sit down conversation with my younger self in my 20s when I was doing all that drinking and wasting all that time and money on drugs and alcohol, I really wish that I wouldn't have done that. The next thing that I want to talk about is buying useless stuff and buying stuff to impress other people. I didn't do this too much, but I had a lot of friends that did. I lived in Vegas during my 20s, and I spent a lot of money on a lot of stuff that I look back now that I don't have anymore, that was really just wasting money. And while some people like to collect stuff and some people like to buy things that may hold value, that's fine if you're into certain things, but I'm mostly talking about buying stuff to impress other people, like getting a lease on a really fancy car just so you can have like a new car. Maybe you're not driving luxury vehicles, but you're spending money on clothes or sneakers or just junk that nobody really cares about, but you get it in order to impress other people. I just wouldn't do that. I wouldn't spend my money on junk or things that you just don't need to be spending money on. Try not to do that when you're in your 20s, because that money can go to better things. And that leads me into the next thing that you should really think about doing when you're in your 20s. Try not to get in debt. Try not to buy anything that is gonna be on a credit card that you don't really need, that you're gonna like end up paying interest on and you're gonna have for a really long time on your credit, and you're gonna like be paying off just crap. And that's how I bought a lot of the stuff that I had, was credit cards, and I got into a lot of debt, and I bought a lot of junk that I didn't need, and I would just charge it to the game. I would just swipe my card every time something new came out, and I wouldn't worry about it, and I'd be like, oh, I'll make the minimum payments. And then what happened was I got into a bunch of debt, and that debt took a long time to get out of. So try your best. If you're in your 20s right now, you have to build credit. And to build credit, you need to get into a little bit of debt, but make credit work for you. Don't get into debt for dumb stuff. And I wish I would have not done that. I wish I really would have just, if I couldn't afford it, I wouldn't have bought it. At the end of the day, I had thousands of dollars in debt, and it was a very big mistake that I did early in my 20s, and I ended up paying that stuff off for years, which leads me into the next thing, is if you get in debt and you pay it off, stay out of debt. Don't fall back into the trap. It's really easy, because I'm speaking from experience where I would get in debt, pay it off, get back in debt, pay it off. And it was like this weird cycle that I would go through, where I would go through like, all right, that's it. I'm not buying any more stupid stuff. I'm going to go ahead and pay all this stuff off. And then I would pay some of it off. And then the next cool thing came out that I wanted to have. And when you have the credit, you do stuff like that, and it's not good to continually get into debt, because eventually you're going to want to make a good purchase. Eventually you're going to want to buy a house, or you're going to want to make some investments, and your debt's going to get in your way. So the first thing I'm going to say about debt is to make sure you pay it off. And the next thing I'm going to say about debt is to make sure you stay out of it. Once you do pay it off, if you do get into debt, just stay away from debt. Make credit work for you. That's one big thing I wish I would have done in my 20s. And I didn't get out of debt till I was in my later 20s, almost 30 years old, when we ended up purchasing our first home. And then it was just like this struggle of like trying to pay off as much as I could, as fast as I could. And I ate top ramen every day just to try to pay off my debt. So just don't put yourself in that situation. Make credit work for you. Stay out of debt and pay off all your debt. And here's one more. Invest early. Make investments early. Start investing as soon as you can. As soon as you get out of debt, and as soon as you pay everything off and you have a little bit of extra money, start investing some of that. Whatever it may be. If it's just an emergency fund, if it's just a saving account with some cash, if it's stocks, if it's real estate, if it's cryptocurrency, if it's gold, if it's silver, start investing early. Start making your money work for you. Start thinking about your future. I spent so much money, and so much of that money I could have invested when I was younger, and I didn't. And I burned it all away, drank it all away, spent it on stuff that I didn't need. And I wish I would have invested a lot of that money earlier, because looking back now, I'd probably have a bigger nest egg. I'd probably have more money put away. And now I'm playing catch up. Start a 401k sooner than later. Start, if your employer offers you investment opportunities, invest as soon as you can, however you can. Just try to start saving some of that money for your future. If you start investing when you're 20 versus when you're 30, you can crunch those numbers, you can do those investment calculators, and you can see how much money you'll save in the long run just if you start investing 10 years earlier. So I wish I would have started investing when I was in my 20s. That's one thing I really regret not doing. So this next thing I'm going to say is do your best to stay away from things that waste time. It's okay to kick back and relax occasionally. That's perfectly normal. After a long day of work, you read a book, you watch a little bit of TV, maybe an hour here, an hour there, that's fine. But when you spend all day long watching Netflix, when you spend all day long scrolling on your phone on social media, when you spend all day long playing video games, when you spend all day long doing stuff that wastes time, that isn't constructive, that isn't productive, that isn't beneficial to your life, that after you're done doing it, you kind of feel a little crappy that you did it, that you kind of feel like you didn't accomplish anything that makes you feel that way after you do it for a long time. Don't keep doing those things, because when you're younger and you're in your 20s, you feel like your whole life's ahead of you, because it is, but then you spend a lot of your time just wasting it. And then you get older and you realize that time moves a little bit faster, and you have a lot less of it, and you have more responsibilities, and all those things that you wasted time on when you were younger, you start regretting, and you start wishing that you had more of that time, and that time's not there anymore. So when you're in your 20s and you're young and you have all that extra time, don't waste it. It's one of my biggest regrets that I spent so much time playing video games or getting drunk and just partying and doing dumb stuff that was just brought no value to my life and was just a waste of time. So don't waste time. It's precious. Trust me. All right. So for the next thing, get rid of worthless friends or worthless people in your life. Everybody's got them. Some of them are family members. Some of them are friends. Anyone who's not bringing value to your life, anyone who's not good to keep around, anyone who's just not going anywhere with their lives, are going to take you with them. And if they're going nowhere, then you're going nowhere. And when I started getting rid of those types of people from my life, I noticed my life started improving. And I noticed that I started doing things that I wanted to do. And I noticed that everything got better for me. And I remember hearing when I was younger, you tell me who you hang around with and I'll tell you who you are. And it took me a long time to learn that. And finally, I started getting away from those people. I started getting away from a lot of the people that were just not good for me and worthless. and there was more value in my life and there was more worth in my life. So just think about that when you're younger, in your 20s, and you have those kind of friends that you know aren't good for you, but you keep them around anyways because they're your buddies. It's not worth it. Trust me. All right, so the next thing is going to be set goals. I wish I would have set goals. I had no goals. I had no ambition. I had nothing. I had no motivation. I didn't do anything. I was just a slacker. No one ever taught me to set goals. I grew up in a very bad way, and my life wasn't all that great. So when I was in my 20s, I carried over a lot of the stuff that I knew from my childhood, and it was pretty much that I wasn't going to go anywhere. So if I wasn't going to go anywhere, why would I bother setting any goals? And I wish that I wouldn't have thought that way. And I wish that when I was younger, in my 20s, I wish that I would have set goals, because at least when you have a target, you know what you're aiming at. When you don't have any goals, you don't have anything to shoot for. So then you kind of just wither away and waste away and do nothing. And that's what I did a lot of. And if you set goals in your 20s, it's going to help you accomplish things as you get older. So make sure to set goals. And that's going to lead me to my next thing, is make sure to follow through. I know so many people that have no follow through. I used to be one of those individuals. The reason why I'm saying all these things is because I was one of these people. And all this stuff that I'm talking about is stuff that I wish I would have done. And I wish I would have had more follow through. I wish I would have, even those little ideas that I would say, that'd be cool to do, maybe one day. I wish I would have just stuck with something. I wish I would have done anything and followed through with it. I didn't follow through with anything ever until I was like 30 years old, and that's when I actually started doing stuff. But through my 20s, I didn't do nothing. It was just a complete waste. No goals and no follow through, no ambition, going nowhere. And if you're in your 20s now, just follow through with stuff, whatever it is. Just see things to completion. You'll start developing that as a habit, and you'll start doing that more often, and you'll see that you'll improve a lot because of it. So just make sure that you follow through with a lot of the things that you want to do when you're in your 20s. So this one's a regret that I have, but I'm trying to improve it, and it's to travel more. When you're in your 20s, you have a lot of freedom, you have a lot of time, and you have very little responsibilities. So take advantage of that and try to travel more. I wish I would have traveled more when I was in my 20s. I went on a few little vacations, but nothing big. I have a few friends that did a lot of traveling, and I'm very envious of them. I'm envious of how much of the world that they got to see and how much they got to do. Besides the occasional snowboarding trip or going to California here and there, or when I went down to Tijuana for one weekend, I didn't do a lot of traveling, and I really regret not seeing more of the world when I had less things tying me down. And yes, I'll be able to make up for some of that, but I had so many opportunities, and I never took advantage of traveling more when I was younger, and I wish I would have done more of that when I was in my 20s. Which leads me to my next thing, is experiences over material things. I talked about all the stuff that I bought and wasted money on, and things that I would buy to try to impress people, and junk that I just don't have anymore, junk that went to Goodwill or got thrown in the trash. And I wish I would have spent that money on experiences. I wish I would have done more things. Besides the occasional trip to a bar or going out to a club, I didn't have a lot of experiences. I didn't do a whole lot of stuff that would have been those memories that I would have made. I don't have a lot of those memories because I didn't do a lot of those things. And I wish that I would have spent a little bit more money or time trying to gain experiences with friends, and valuable experiences like traveling or picking up a new hobby or doing things that were just a lot of fun, that weren't around alcohol and drugs and wasting time. More road trips and more gatherings and more things that brought value to my life and made memories, because I wasted so much time at home in front of my TV, on my gaming console, and on my computer, and then the times that I did go out were just binge drinking and partying and like hazy nights where you might consider those experiences, but it was the same experience every time I went out, and it was just going to a bar and getting as drunk as I could and spending all my money gambling or drinking. And those aren't experiences. I'm talking about real world experiences with people that you love and things that you'll remember that'll bring you joy in the future. So keep that in mind, that experiences over material things or just the quick, be happy for one weekend, but it really wasn't an experience because it's the same thing you do every weekend. That's something I would have done a little bit different when I was in my 20s. So the next one is going to be don't stay at bad jobs. I was pretty good about this, but I know people who stayed at the same job for a really long time and they weren't happy and they weren't making enough money and they were just complacent and they stayed there. And I know some people that are still at some of those jobs that they hated and they never got out of because they were just fine making the little bit of money they were making and never wanted to really improve, or it was too much work to find another job, so they just stayed. This is one thing that I will say that I think I did okay with, was leaving jobs when I didn't like them anymore and finding better jobs and finding jobs that paid more and finding better job opportunities and moving on to different things and not staying stuck at the same place too long. If you're at a bad job, if you're at a place that makes you miserable all day long, it's going to lead to misery in the rest of your life, and that's going to lead to like drinking and not being happy or going home and being depressed because your job sucks. If you're at a bad job, get the hell out of there. The next thing I'm going to say is get out of bad relationships. I mentioned the worthless friends, but the bad relationships is beyond just people who are not bringing you value in your life. I'm talking about toxic relationships. I'm talking about the bad girlfriend or the bad boyfriend. I'm talking about the people who just are just terrible people who aren't any good for you and you don't want around you. And again, these aren't the worthless people. These are the people that are toxic and make you sad and make you depressed and make you feel small. And some of those might be friends, some of those might be romantic partners, some of those might be, your boss at work, which then leads into getting out of a bad job. But just try to eliminate toxic people. It could be a family member. Like I said, worthless people and toxic people are a little different because worthless people might not make you feel bad about yourself and might not make you sad, but toxic people will. And they come in all forms. They come in all shapes and sizes, and they come in different areas of your life. And if it's a coworker that you don't want to be around, then don't take breaks with them, or try to ask your boss to move you to a different shift so you don't have to see them. If it's a boyfriend or a girlfriend, get the hell out of that relationship. It might be hard. Everybody's had those toxic, bad relationships. Nothing good comes out of them. If you have a bad relationship in your 20s, you might spend too many of your good years with that person. If you have toxic friends that all they do is bring you down and make you feel crappy about yourself, find new friends. You're better off not having friends than having toxic friends, because it's just going to end up leading you to having a lot of depression, and it's going to affect your mental health, and it's not going to make you happy at the end of the day, and it's going to waste a lot of your valuable time in your young years when you could be making good relationships and healthy relationships that will last you for a lifetime. You don't ever want to have a lifetime of bad relationships. Trust me, try to get away from those people and try to avoid them. Most of the time, once you've been in a bad relationship or have had toxic friends or toxic partners, you'll kind of have a better way of recognizing them when new ones come around, and you'll be able to avoid them a lot easier. So just do your best to stay away from those toxic relationships. So the next thing is a mindset that I wish I would have started adopting when I was in my 20s. I've started thinking like this recently. I wish I would have thought like an entrepreneur. I wish my thinking revolved around how I can make more money for myself, how I can make money while I sleep, how I can make businesses that create more wealth for me, and all the ways that entrepreneurs think. I had an employee type mentality. I'd never thought in a million years that I can be an employer. And now I'm trying to pursue different ways of making money, and I'm starting to think more in that direction. But in my 20s, I never thought like that. I didn't grow up thinking like that. I was never in the mindset of being someone who could make something of themselves. And I just thought like I get a job and I'll be happy, and then maybe I'll get a better job that pays me a little bit more, or do whatever I can to get by and with what I'm making, and be fine with that. But recently I've been realizing that that's a mindset. And if I would have thought like an entrepreneur when I was younger, I probably would have found a lot of more opportunities to make money and invest for my future and find different avenues of producing income for myself. And that way I wouldn't have to work a job every single day. And now I'm finally starting to think that way, but I'm in my mid 30s. I wish I would have thought that way when I was in my mid 20s. So that's why I'm sharing that one as one of my, things I would do differently if I was in my 20s again. All right, I'm getting pretty close to the end of this list. The next thing is going to be always look for ways that you can improve. This is another mindset that I have recently adopted. This is a way of thinking that I wish I would have thought like this when I was 20 years old, but I would have done a lot more with my life had I thought this way, is just constantly try to find where you can improve in life. If you're not eating good, try to eat a little better. If you're drinking too much, try not to drink so much. If you're a cigarette smoker, try to quit. If you're not making money, try to make more money. If you're making money, try to make more money. There's so many ways that you can improve little areas of your life, small things, just little tiny things. And those small improvements become greater and greater, and they start to snowball. And eventually you're just looking at different ways that you can improve your improvements, and it starts to compound, and it starts to grow, and you start to grow, and you get better, and you're constantly improving. And that is just a great way to think. And I wish I would have thought like that when I was in my 20s. I wish I would have just looked for all the areas that I could have improved, and I would have started making improvements in all of those areas. And now I'm doing it when I'm older, and it's just kind of one of those things in hindsight. I wish I would have known this, so I'm just trying to pass it on to you guys with my, 20 things I would do differently in my 20s here. And honestly, this is probably one of the most important things that I'm going to mention, is make sure not to neglect your mental health. Make sure that you make that a priority. It took me many, many years to realize that I had to deal with my mental health, and I tried to put it off, and I tried to bury it when I was younger and when I was in my 20s, and I did it with drugs and alcohol and video games, and I tried to act like I didn't have any problems with my mental health. But I do, and many people do. And even if you feel like you don't, it never hurts to go talk to somebody. Now I'm 36 years old, and I finally started talking to a therapist, and I finally started improving my mental health. And it's one of the best decisions that I ever made. And I really, really, really regret not doing it when I was younger, because it would have been a lot better for me to handle that when I was younger, and then not have to keep it bottled up and deal with it when I got older, as I am now. But at least I'm dealing with it. And I really hope if anyone takes anything from this video, it's this: make sure you take care of your mental health, because it's very, very important. So this next one is actually stolen from How I Met Your Mother, and it's nothing good happens after 2 a.m.
Kids, your grandma always used to say to me, nothing good happens after 2 a.m. And she was right. When 2 a.m. rolls around, just go home and go to sleep.
I remember one of my buddies that I would go drinking with had his bank not allow him to withdraw any money after midnight from his ATM. If you're in your 20s right now and you're partying it up, and someone is telling you, let's go out, and it's already 1 a.m. and you're just like, this is probably gonna end poorly. It probably will, because I know I had many nights, especially living in Vegas, that town never shuts down. It's a 24-hour city, so you can get in trouble at any hour of the day. And usually 2 a.m. is when you're headed to an after-hours club, and nothing good happens at an after-hours club. And that's for sure. I've worked at them, I've been to them, and if you're walking into a club that's opening up at 2 or 3 in the morning, definitely you're gonna be in for a crazy night, and you're probably gonna wake up with a lot of regrets in the morning. So just keep that in mind. Okay, getting really close now. Only a few more to go. The next one is going to sound a little cheesy, but just make sure to spend more time with the people you love. And that's something that a lot of us forget to do when we're younger, when we're in our 20s. We feel like the whole world's ahead of us, and we don't realize that there may be some people around that won't be around forever. And it's really good to spend quality time with the people that you love, and people that bring you joy, and people that you want to be around. So don't neglect your loved ones. Don't neglect those healthy relationships. Not everyone's going to be around forever. So make sure that you spend time with the people that you love. Because one thing that you're not going to look back on and say, man, I wish I just wouldn't have done that, is spending time with people you love. You're going to look back and think the opposite. You're going to look back and say, man, I wish I could just get one more day with that person. So really, really think about that. And the last thing that I'm going to mention is going to be learn to code. I wish I would have learned to code when I was younger. I wish I wouldn't have just played around with HTML and CSS on MySpace. I wish I would have turned it into a career. I wish I would have pursued it, and I wish I would have learned to code. And that was 15 years ago. And it's still a prime time right now to learn to code. So one thing that I would do differently in my 20s, and if you watch my channel, obviously I was going to throw this one on the list, is learn to code. It can improve your life. It can make you money. It can open up different types of opportunities for you. You can build a startup. You can create your own applications. You can create your own websites. You can get a high-paying job with a good career with a lot of benefits and investment opportunities and all types of different things. Nothing bad will come from learning how to code. Only good things will come from learning how to code. So to end this video, one thing for sure that I would do if I was in my 20s right now that I wish I would have done when I was in my 20s is learn to code, because I think at least everyone should give it a try, especially if you're young, and you never know, it might be something you really like, and nothing bad can come from learning how to code. Only good opportunities and maybe possibly a career for you. So that's what I'm going to close it off with. And that was my 20 things that I would do differently if I was in my 20s again. I hope this video brought you some value. I hope there was some good information in here that might help some 20-year-old kid right now who has no direction and is thinking about things that they should or shouldn't do when they're in their 20s. And if it did, and if that's you, make sure you hit that like button. It'll help me out a lot with the YouTube algorithm. And thanks for watching. I appreciate it. And if I could pass down a little bit of knowledge to somebody who's younger than me and maybe help them out to find their path or their direction in life, and if it's from some YouTube video that they watch some old dude talking about all the things he regrets not doing when he was 20 years old, then I'm happy. All right, with all that said, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.